The knock was so gentle I almost didn't hear it, that soft, hesitant sound, the kind that hovers between confidence and doubt. I stood frozen at my kitchen sink, hands still slick with dish soap, watching the sunset paint my backyard in that impossible mixture of violet and amber that only spring delivers. The scent of rosemary chicken still hung in the air around me. I wasn't expecting anyone. I never did. Not anymore. 5 years since Mark's heart gave out, and my days had become a study in quiet routine. Garden in the morning, book in the afternoon, empty house at night. The kind of predictable safety you build when you're afraid to feel anything too deeply ever again. When I opened that door, everything changed. Ben stood there, my neighbor of 2 years, clutching a small basket wrapped in linen, looking as nervous as a schoolboy. We'd exchanged pleasantries over garbage bins and garden fences, but nothing more. Just two middle-aged people existing in adjacent spaces. "Hi, Susan," he said, his voice slightly rough, like he'd rehearsed this moment several times before actually knocking. "Sorry to just appear like this, but I made too many scones and thought, well, maybe you'd like some." Scones. Such a simple thing to unravel me. I invited him in for tea, an impulse that surprised even me. We sat in my sunroom as the day surrendered to evening, drinking from the same delicate cups Mark and I once shared on winter nights. The silence between us felt strangely comfortable, like finding an old sweater you'd forgotten existed. He told me about taking up baking to quiet his mind after his divorce, about missing his teenage daughter who lived with her mother. His eyes carried that particular shade of sadness I recognized instantly, the look of someone who's learned to carry on despite the empty spaces. "I miss her," he whispered, staring into his cup. "It's strange, isn't it? You raise them, love them with everything you've got, and then one day they just become someone else's." "That's not strange," I said, my voice softer than I intended. "It's just being a parent. It's the hardest part, I think, letting go." Our eyes met, and something passed between us, a current of recognition. Two people who understood loss without needing to explain it. That night, lying in bed, staring at my ceiling, I felt something stir that had been dormant for so long I'd convinced myself it had died with Mark. A flicker, a pulse, a dangerous little flame. It's okay to feel again. Have you ever noticed how possibility is both the most beautiful and terrifying thing in this world? 3 days crawled by. I caught myself lingering at windows, taking extra time with my hair, listening for footsteps that weren't there. Ridiculous behavior for a 55-year-old woman, I told myself. Childish, desperate. Then Saturday arrived with unexpected warmth. "Need a hand?" There he was at the edge of his yard, sleeves rolled up, holding a shovel like an offering, eyes crinkling at the corners. "I'm trying to make my garden look half as nice as yours," he said, nodding toward my lavender bushes. "But I'm pretty sure I'm just digging holes and hoping for a miracle." The laugh that escaped me felt foreign, unplanned, genuine. When was the last time I'd laughed without thinking about it first? "Would you be interested in joining me for dinner tonight?" he asked suddenly. "Nothing fancy, just something I'm throwing together. I'd enjoy the company." Have you ever felt yourself standing at a crossroads without realizing you'd been walking toward it all along? His house was just like him, understated, thoughtful, with quiet displays of love in every corner. Photos of his daughter, bookshelves heavy with travel guides for places he'd never been. 2 candles on the table, not 1, not 3, and the rich aroma of homemade lasagna filling every room. "I used to think I'd retire in Italy," he confessed over dinner, his fork pausing mid-air. "Open a little cafe by the water, but life had other plans." "Mark and I were going to travel the country in an RV," I heard myself say. "We even picked out the model." Then his heart gave out too soon. He didn't look away or offer empty platitudes. He just listened, truly listened, as if my grief deserved the space to exist without needing to be fixed. Later, on his back porch, under a sky turning to velvet, he reached for my hand, not grabbing, not claiming, just his fingers brushing against mine. A question with no pressure for an answer. God, I'd forgotten what it felt like to be touched that way, with such care, with such patience. The kind of touch that says, "I see you, and I want to know who you are," all at once. I let my fingers curl around his. We sat like that for what felt like hours, not speaking, just holding this fragile thing between us. 2 people tethered by something neither of us had expected to find again. Walking home that night, stars scattered above me like witnesses, my heart beat with a steady, unfamiliar calm. not racing with anxiety or anticipation, but pulsing with something I thought had been buried alongside my husband, possibility. For the first time in years, I opened my journal and wrote a single line. Something is waking up in me again. Cha-churt. Days that followed weren't dramatic or cinematic. No sweeping gestures or passionate declarations. Just small, deliberate steps toward each other. He left fresh bread at my door with notes. We waved from our windows. We existed in each other's orbits, neither of us rushing, both of us careful with what was growing between us. 2 weeks after that first handhold, he called after a spring shower had washed everything clean. "Hey," he said, his voice warm through the phone. "I know it's last minute, but I could use a walk. Mind some company?" We met where the old oak trees formed a canopy over our street, everything smelling of wet earth and lilacs, sunlight breaking through clouds in rays that felt almost biblical. As we turned into the neighborhood park, our conversation deepened, without effort. "I used to walk this trail with her," he said softly. "My daughter when she was little. She loved collecting stones and pretending they were magic. Once she gave me one and told me it would protect me from grown-up sadness." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Do you still have it?" I asked. "Top drawer in my nightstand." He nodded. "Every time I think about tossing it, I can't." I reached for his hand then, deliberate this time, certain. "I think it's still working," I told him. He stopped walking beneath a flowering dogwood tree and looked at me in a way that made time itself seem to hesitate. "Susan, I didn't think I could feel this way again," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't expect to. You and I, we've both lived." "We have," I agreed, "and we've lost, but maybe that's why this matters." He reached into his pocket and placed a small, smooth stone in my palm. "You need protection too," he said. My throat tightened. I wasn't used to tenderness anymore. It's amazing how quickly we forget how to receive kindness when we've gone without it for so long. We kept walking, hands clasped, that stone warm against my skin. And somewhere along that winding path, I realized I wasn't just letting someone into my life. I was letting myself out of the carefully constructed shelter I'd built around my heart. When we reached the end of the trail as dusk began to fall, he turned to me. "I don't want to say goodnight just yet," he said. "Then don't." His eyes searched mine, asking permission without words. I nodded, and there, with spring unfurling around us, his lips found mine in a kiss so gentle it felt like a question, not fireworks, not passion that consumes everything in its path, but warmth, recognition, the start of something honest. That night, I didn't write in my journal. I didn't need to. I already knew how the next entry would read. "I think I'm falling, and I'm not afraid this time." The next morning, everything looked different, not because the world had changed, but because I was finally seeing it clearly again. When Ben called that afternoon, I said yes before he even finished asking to come over. He arrived with 2 coffees and uncertainty in his eyes. "I hope this doesn't feel too fast," he said, handing me a cup. I couldn't stop thinking about last night." We sat in my sunroom again, letting silence speak what words couldn't. "You scare me a little, Susan," he finally said. I laughed. "Me? Because this feels real," he explained. "And I haven't let anything feel real in a long time." I understood completely. I'd built my existence after Mark's death around routines that demanded nothing and gave just enough to keep me breathing. Ben was asking me to do more than breathe. "I'm scared too," I admitted. "But maybe that's a good thing." We spent hours that day sharing the things we usually kept hidden. How grief changes shape but never leaves. How parts of ourselves had been packed away for so long we'd forgotten they existed. How hope can be buried so deep it seems lost forever. What emerged wasn't some grand passion or second chance. It was something entirely new. A beginning painted in quieter colors, but no less vivid. As spring melted into summer, our lives intertwined naturally. Sunday breakfasts, shared crossword puzzles, books left on porches with little notes, the kind of ordinary moments that, strung together, become a life. We didn't rush. We didn't need to. What was growing between us had its own rhythm, its own timeline. One night, watching fireflies illuminate my backyard like earthbound stars, he took my hand again. "You know," he said, "I think we found each other exactly when we needed to." I rested my head against his shoulder. "No, I think we chose to see each other when we were finally ready." Not everything had changed. The world still turned the same way. My garden still needed tending. Time still moved forward. But inside me, something had opened, a door I thought had been permanently sealed, and I knew with absolute certainty that this chapter of my life was no less meaningful than any that came before. Perhaps it was even more precious because we both understood how rare it was to find connection again, how easily it could have slipped past unnoticed. What would you have done if you were me? Would you have opened that door when the knock came? Would you have reached for that hand when it was offered? Sometimes the most unexpected gesture, a basket of scones, a borrowed shovel, a stone meant to ward off sadness, becomes the beginning of everything. And sometimes the bravest thing we can do is simply to say yes when life offers us another chance to feel. Because the heart doesn't know time. It doesn't count years or measure appropriate mourning periods. It just knows when it's ready to beat fully again, and mine was finally ready.